Good evening and welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Alex Lord. We got a bunch of Falcons free agencies. This will serve a little bit as a free agency primer. We talked about the quarterbacks yesterday, and we're going to start off with the quarterbacks again today because there's been even more rumors connecting Kirk Cousins to Atlanta. The latest being Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk, who says that he is seriously considering moving his family to Atlanta. Now, this was a very odd article from Florio because he's like, I can't get into specifics, but Kirk Cousins and his family are apparently considering moving to Atlanta, which means he's going to play for the Atlanta Falcons. Now, it was very odd, but this does add another NFL insider that says Kirk Cousins to the Falcons is a legitimate, and that marriage very well could happen this season.
Yeah, Florio is such a weirdo. I just got to get that out there. If you haven't seen it, go read the article for yourself. He basically alludes to Kirk Cousins as like, he knows his realtor or something along those lines is what it felt like. But this is just another report, and another one came after that. That, the betting favorites now obviously take this with a grain of salt. We said this last week to take the Justin Fields next team odds with a grain of salt, and you should do the same with Kirk Cousins. But the Falcons are betting favorites. I think minus 175 they were.
Yeah, minus 175. Yeah, they were minus 425 last week for Justin Fields, and now they're minus 175 for Kirk Cousins. I think you said it last week in an article. You can go check it out at sportstalkatl.com. But listen, the Falcons are going to be considered favorites for just about every single quarterback vacancy out there because they have one of the biggest needs for a quarterback, and they have the cap space to get it. They have the draft capital to trade for a Justin Fields, and they have a top 10 draft picks to potentially move up for a quarterback or land someone like Michael Penix or J.J. McCarthy in the draft. So it's not really a surprise that they're considered the favorites to almost get everybody. Yeah. So it's hard to take that for worth anything.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar with sports betting, markets fluctuate very rapidly. They're very fluid based on obviously the flow of bets, the money, the amount of bets, but also reports and these rumors that we learn in Vegas is probably 24 hours ahead of us when they set these lines. So it's a very, very fluid situation. I said last week, I would not, Justin Fields might be the quarterback and Kirk Cousins might be the quarterback, but you shouldn't make your decision or your guess based upon what Vegas is saying, even if Vegas is right a lot of the times. Now, I will say, I don't know his name, but the Minnesota beat reporter for ESPN laid out basically different points as to where the direction of Kirk Cousins' looming free agency is going. And he's going to test the market. And when he tests the market, if that's the case, chances are he's going to leave Minnesota. And when you start stacking potential free agent destinations, Atlanta is very high on there for several reasons. And I actually just broke this down in an article. You go check it on the site, sportstalkatl.com. The Falcons don't have an overwhelmingly more attractive spot than the Vikings. In terms of offensive personnel, the Vikings are very comparable. Vikings fans would say that they're better. When you have Justin Jefferson, you probably have a point. They have a similar amount of cap space. They can create more cap space just like the Falcons can. A couple of things working against the Vikings is the NFC North. Obviously, the NFC South is wide open. Kirk Cousins could come to this division and be the best quarterback immediately. That's not to say he wouldn't be in the NFC North, but Jordan Love at the Packers, Jared Goff in the Lions, and assumingly it's going to be Caleb Williams in the Bears, that's a lot more stiffer competition than what he would face in the NFC South. But with all that being said, the Falcons can squash this bug with a blink of an eye. It's fully guaranteed money. That's what Kirk Cousins is looking for. That's what the Vikings are balking at. And if the Falcons, like they said, they want to be aggressive, they want to, fix this and be aggressive in doing so, there's nothing more aggressive than giving a 36-year-old coming off an Achilles injury a fully guaranteed deal that is seemingly going to be the last of his career. So 3 years, I would say. 3 years, $40 million per year, fully guaranteed.
Yeah, and the Vikings also have that deal that they're going to have to make with Justin Jefferson, which is probably going to reset the receivers market, probably going to be around $30 million a year, if not more than that. So, yes, they have cap space, but do they have the cap space to make a good team with Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson? I think that's a question that they're probably sitting there mulling over right now. And I think most people think the answer to that is no. But then again, Justin Jefferson came out and said that he wants a full plan. And the Vikings have to come up with a backup plan if they did not go with Kirk Cousins.
And they sit at the 11th pick. Similar to the Falcons, they're outside of that, top three: Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, Drake May. I think JJ McCarthy is much closer to that top three than he is to the next tier of Bo Nix and Michael Penix. So the Vikings are going to have a backup plan similarly as the Falcons would be if one of the other sides obviously gets Kirk Cousins, the other one's going to have to go to their plan B, C, D, whatever it is. And the Vikings don't exactly have a prime position to land that quarterback in the draft, similar as the Falcons, unless, of course, J.J. McCarthy is the guy. But I just read something that the Giants are done with Daniel Jones. So there, you got to add another team in the mix that is in front of both the Falcons and the Vikings. It's going to be very competitive. And if the Cardinals get to that 4 spot and hear phones ringing for that JJ McCarthy or Jaden Daniels, whoever falls.
I mean, that's why that report that it could go quarterback. Yes, I don't think anyone thinks JJ McCarthy is a top 4 prospect in this year's draft, or if it's Drake May that falls or whoever it may be is a top 4 prospect in this draft. But it very well could play out that way because of the competition behind those top 3 spots. Obviously, the top 3 spots need a quarterback, but then you have a team like the Giants, the Raiders, the Broncos just made it official that they have released Russell Wilson, the Vikings, the Falcons. There's 5 or 6 teams vying for that 4th quarterback. And if you're the Cardinals, you're sitting there like, hey, you can come and get them.
Yeah, I think I wanted to go through it a couple times because this has been the talk of the town on Falcons Twitter. At least I assume the same conversation is going on Facebook. Is the downsides of a Kirk Cousins contract and the upsides of a Kirk Cousins contract? I think they're very simple. I think that, obviously the downsides are the fully guaranteed deal. You're not going to be able to get out of it. And he's 36 years old, coming off a very serious injury. I think the very first serious injury of his career. He's been rather healthy for pretty much his entire career. So the first serious injury, and he's not a long-term fix for a problem that needs a long-term answer. Now, obviously, if you want to take away the plus sides, I mean, those are also obvious.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Kirk Cousins is the best guy. I mean, we're talking about a guy that was a bona fide top 10, and I've seen QB rankings that have him closer to the top 5 than the 10. That's who he was before the injury. Now, hopefully he can come back and be that guy. But if he is that guy, you're talking about a Falcons team, and we said it, I think it was last week. Kirk Cousins could very easily, if he's the same guy he was last year pre-injury, be the best quarterback in the NFC, not just the NFC South.
Yeah, I think, when you look at the landscape of the NFC, it's by far the worst conference compared to the AFC, not only just overall teams, but the quarterbacks. I mean, every great quarterback is in the AFC. I mean, the NFC is wide open. You have Kirk Cousins with a very good Atlanta football team with Zach Robinson, and you're comparing him to a Jalen Hurts that really regressed this past year, Dak Prescott that seemingly similar to Kirk Cousins hasn't got his team over the hump in the postseason. Brock Purdy similarly hasn't gotten his team over. You got Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford. I mean, this is a conversation. Like, this isn't just us pulling this out of our butt. Like, Kirk Cousins very well could be the best quarterback in the NFC. Now, arguments are to be had, but it's a legitimate argument.
I mean, we saw that report from Diana Rossini that the Falcons believe that Kirk Cousins not only makes them an NFC South favorite, it makes them legitimate contenders. And I don't think you can argue that, especially if you get to keep that 8th overall pick. Maybe you bring in another wide receiver like Malik Neighbors. I mean, that offense right there, you're returning all 5 starters. Yep. You've got a 1-2 punch at receiver that's as good as anyone. You got one of the best receiving tight ends in the league that's coming back healthy in Kyle Pitts. You have one of the best running backs in football. I mean, if you're Kirk Cousins, not only is the NFC South very appealing to you, but the prospect of that has to be unbelievably appealing to you and coming to Atlanta.
Yeah, and then you could just go on to the defensive side of the ball, and it's been a very improved unit, though it does have some holes that need to be addressed. That's not to say that you can't take a guy like, instead of Malik Neighbors or Odunze with that 8th overall pick, you take a guy like Jared Verse or Dallas Turner, and you do address some of those defensive concerns. And then again, you've got guys like a L'Jarius Sneed trade as an option. So there's plenty of ways to fix the few holes on Atlanta's roster, and it is easily a contender. Now, obviously, there's going to be, they'll probably be just outside the top. I'll ask you this question. This is a good question. They get Kirk Cousins. What are their odds jump from? Right now, Super Bowl odds. Right now, or maybe a couple of months ago, they were tied with the Jaguars, Browns, and Rams for Super Bowl odds.
They were like 33, 35 to 1. I mean, I think they get Kirk Cousins. They're at least at 25 to 1. I think they're right there with probably like the Philadelphia Eagles, which is almost shocking to say, but that's just the nature of this league. You know, you can go
turnover.
You can go from the middle of the pack to the front of the pack very easily. I mean, look at the regression that the Eagles face. Now Jason Kelsey's retiring. Now there's a bunch of other guys that they're either going to have to extend or move off of, veterans that have really been the leader of this Philadelphia Eagles team that's been one of the best teams in the NFC for the last 6-7 years. Yeah. They're going to have to decide whether they want to keep some of them or move off of them. And they lose Jason Kelsey. I mean, it's wide open. I mean, they're legitimately a threat in the NFC with Kirk Cousins. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
No, I couldn't agree more. But again, this is next week. This time next week, we'll be talking free agents because the new league year is exactly a week away, or at least the legal tampering period. So we're going to have a lot more news in just about a week.
Yeah, let's go to break. After the break, we're going to talk about if the Falcons got to choose between Jaden Daniels and Drake May in the draft, which direction would they go?